Welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. In today's episode, it's Photoshop. This is a Photoshop tutorial. I want to look at the color range selections inside of Photoshop. They're very powerful. I think a lot of us forget about them, but they can really help us get really great edits. And we're going to take an image that started out looking like this and use color range adjustments and turn it into this. I'm going to show you how this works. It's really easy to use, and I think after you watch this video, you're going to start using that color range selection tool. So let's get started. I'm going to start out by closing up this group here and shutting off its eyeballs so we can start from scratch. Now we're on the background layer, so we're going to come up here to select, and we're going to come to color range, and this will open up our color range tool here. Now, inside of here we have select and a drop-down menu. We can choose from colors, highlights, midtones, shadows, skin tones, out of gamut. We're not dealing with these right today. We're mainly dealing with sample colors. I'll work with those in another video. We have a checkbox for detect faces. There's no faces in here, so it's grayed out. We have localized color clusters. I'll explain that in a second. We have a fuzziness slider. And basically what a fuzziness slider does is it just widens out your selection area or narrows it out. Okay, so you'll see how that works here in a sec. And then we have an eyedropper tool that comes pre-selected here. This is the main eyedropper tool. We have a add to sample tool and a subtract from sample tool. I'm not going to use those today. I'm just going to use this main eyedropper tool. And when I use those, I use shortcuts, but I'll show you that in another video. But for now, we're just keeping it simple, going with a regular just eyedropper tool. Now, if we select anything on this image, like say for instance, see this green building here, if I select it right here, and see how that, you can see where that turns white right there. Now the fuzziness slider will widen out this adjustment or narrow it down. If I click on this red house right here, it's picking the red house. If I pick these mountains back here, it's picking the mountains. So it's pretty cool. Say, for instance, we wanted to increase the saturation of the red houses, but every red house in this picture. So I'm just going to click on the red here, and I'm going to take this fuzziness and I'm going to drag it up a decent amount here. And there's red here too, so I'm watching on the side here too. So I'm going to make sure I get all that here. Now, the localized clusters, if I click this, you'll notice it mainly sticks around the sample point that I made. In my case, I want the entire image, so I'm going to shut the localized clusters off. I'm going to click OK. And when I do, you'll notice I have marching ants selected. All right, that's my selection. So now I can come down here to my adjustment layers, and I can choose any adjustment I want. In my case, I'm going to choose hue and saturation. Now, normally when you click an adjustment layer, it's going to add the adjustment plus a layer mask, a white layer mask with it. But whenever you have a selection and you click an adjustment layer, for instance, hue saturation, you notice that layer mask from my selection is selected. Now, if I option or alt click this mask, you can see there's all my red tones in the image that are in white. Option or alt click it again, and we're back to the image. So now when I click on the hue saturation adjustment here, and I pull up the saturation, I'm only affecting my red tones. So I can make my red tone saturation really pop out there. And adds a lot of color pop to this image in the reds anyway for now. And then I can come with a lightness and I can make it lighter or darker. In my case, I think I might want it a little bit darker. So I'll move the lightness slider a little bit to the left. Now let's toggle this eye right here. So here's the before and after, but you notice it's affecting every red tone in the image. Now, if I hold the shift key down and click on the mask, it'll shut the layer mask off. And look what my adjustment would look like without the mask. It would look horrible, right? But look how that mask is just targeting red. So that's pretty cool. That's the red tones. Now I'm looking at my image here, and I'm looking at these mountains back here, and there's a little bit of blue on these mountains, which to me is a little bit too strong. And by the way, I'm working with a stock image today. I just thought this was a good one to work with because it had a lot of color in it. I thought it really helped us with the color range tool. But what if I wanted to eliminate some of this blue tone back in this mountain here? Well, let's come up to select and go to color range, and remember, it comes up with the picker here, so let's click on some of this blue color back in here. Maybe right there. Okay. And now let's adjust the fuzziness here. I'm trying, see if I go too much, I'll get all these buildings up in here too. But I want to mainly focus on that color back in there. So I don't want my fuzziness to be too wide, but maybe something right around there looks good. Let's click OK. And there's our selection. So now let's come down and to the adjustment layers. Let's do hue and saturation again. And now let's take the saturation and start to move it back. And look at that. I can remove a lot of that blue off of that mountain there. And you notice it's not affecting a lot of the rest of the image right there. So I can effectively pull that blue back like that. Now let's click its eye. And look at that. Just like that. I've corrected that issue right there. And these blues up here still look good because they were not in this tonal range of that color. So that's nice. Now let's use the color range tool for something other than a saturation adjustment. I want to use it to add some contrast in this land here, okay? But before I do that, I want to point something out to you. If you ever have your layer mask selected right here, see how it's highlighted in white rather than having the icon of the adjustment highlighted? If your layer mask is highlighted and you come up here and click select and go to color range, notice what happens to your mask. It goes black. And even though you do come here and make a selection and click OK, this mask will remain black and you'll screw up your previous adjustment. So be careful with that. I'm going to press cancel. So be very cautious and make sure you never have a layer mask selected when you make a color range adjustment. Okay, so make sure you have the actual adjustment icon selected. Okay, so now let's come up here to select. And let's go to color range. And now let me pick a color in here, in this lighter area, like right here. And I'm going to take the fuzziness and pull it in a good bit. And again, I'm not working with localized, I'm working with global adjustments here. So I have the localized shut off. So I'm just going to pull that fuzziness up. Let me try this right around here. And click OK. And now what I'm going to do is, and you can see I have my marching ants selected. And I'm going to come to the adjustment layers, and this time I'm going to grab a curves adjustment. And what I'm going to do is take my curves adjustment, and I can either pull down to darken those areas. See that? I can darken all those land areas, or I can lighten them up. And when I lighten them up a little bit, it adds a little bit of contrast pop in there, which I like that. I don't want to go too crazy there. So I'm going to pull up on this curve, and I might just take the lower tones, shadow tones, and pull that down a little bit, just to add a little more contrast. Now let's click this eyeball. So here's the before and here's the after. But you notice it goes over all that land of the image, and that is a really cool adjustment. And if you felt you went too far, you can take the opacity slider, pull it off, and then just start to drag it up and just add as much of that contrast in there as you want. And I might say around 71, like that. So isn't that cool? So now we use the color range adjustment to make a contrast adjustment. Let's add some saturation to these yellow buildings that are all over this scene here. So now take note here, since the last adjustment was made, my mask is highlighted, which is going to give me problems. So I got to make sure I click on the adjustment icon. Very important. That's going to happen all the time, so you always got to come and click that. So let's come back to filter and I'm sorry, not filter, but select. Let's come to color range and let's select some of these yellow tones in here, like right here. And now let's play with our fuzziness. And pull that up. I don't know, something like, got to be careful here. I just turned on that localized clusters for a second just to see what it would do. I think right there is going to be pretty good. Let's click OK. And now we have the marching ant selected. And let's come to the adjustment layer and hue saturation. And let's take our saturation and bump that up. Okay. And let's bump it up a good bit because I want those buildings to really pop. And I'm going to show you a little trick here next. You can see that it's affecting my foreground here a little bit, but let's click this eyeball. So here's the before and here's the after. But it's hitting all my buildings really nicely. And I'll just play with its lightness real quick just to see if I want to lighten it or darken it. No, I think it's good, right? Or was it 0? All right. And of course, we could shift the hue if we wanted to as well. Look, we can make those buildings blue if we wanted to. But I want to keep them yellow, so I'm going to leave that hue right at 0. Okay. I'm going to show you how to take care of this problem where we have some other areas selected here. And this is really a cool little thing to do. So what you're going to want to do is right-click on this hue saturation layer and come to Group from Layers and click that. This is a little technique called masking a mask. And we can name this, but I'm not for sake of time, and click OK. And now what I want to do is put a black layer mask on here. So if I hold the Option or the Alt key down and click on the layer mask icon, it puts a black hide all layer mask. And now what I'm going to do is make sure I'm painting with white paint. If you don't have white paint here, just type your D key on your keyboard and that'll give you the default. And if you ever need to flip these swatches around, just type the X key. But you make sure you have white paint, and I'm going to make sure I'm on a brush. My opacity is 100%, my flow is at 100%. And all I'm going to do now is come and paint yellow here. And I can be very sloppy how I paint, because it's really only targeting yellows. And all I'm trying to do is keep it off this ground up here. You even see these little yellow cans in here. Any other yellow right in here, maybe a little bit. And just like that. I don't know if there's any yellow back here. There's a couple yellow buildings here. Maybe one right in there. So now I haven't affected any of that foreground there. So let's click this eyeball. So here's the before and here's the after. So now we've got the yellow buildings. Here's something else I really want to point out. Whenever you do a masking the mask, put it in a group and put a layer mask in that group. Before you add your next color selection, you got to collapse this group. So come to the left side next to the file folder and that little triangle there, give it a click and close that. And make sure that you're on this layer here that is selected before you make your next selection, okay? Make sure you don't have the mask selected too. You want to make sure it's not highlighted. Make sure click on the actual file folder here. Now let's work on these mountains back here. Let's add a little bit of contrast to these mountains. So let's come back to select, go to color range, and we'll just find a darker color in here. So let's say like right here, we'll click on that. Let's play with our fuzziness here. And as you can see, it's going all over here. It's working on this building top here. That may not hurt us here because the darkness up a little bit might work out for us. We can always mask the mask if we need to. But maybe something like around there. Let's click OK. All right, and there's our selection. So let's come down to the adjustment layers. This time, let's get a curves. And I'm going to show you another little trick here. Instead of pulling down on the curve, let's go to the blend mode and change it to multiply. And just like that, we've darkened, all those shadows on that mountain. So take a look at that. Here's a before and after. Now it's also affecting other areas of the image, like down here. Yeah, and I don't like it down here. But let's take the opacity. I think it's too strong. Let's take it off and maybe just build it up a little bit, because maybe we don't want too much contrast back in there. Okay, maybe something like that. Let's click the eyeball before and after. Before and after. Okay, let's mask the mask again. This will be good practice for you. I'm going to also leave a link in the description below so you can download this image and edit along with me. I think that would be a good learning experience for you. So let me right click here and let's group from layers. We won't name it for sake of time. And let's option click the icon right here, the mask icon, put a black mask on there. And we're going to be painting on this mask with white paint, and I still have my paintbrush selected. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger here. You can use your left and right bracket key to do that, and then just paint the adjustment on. And you don't have to be that careful, just painting over these shadow areas here. Okay. And we can even come over here and see if there's any of the shadows that got picked up. Yeah, and some got picked up over here as well. Okay, so just like that. We have not affected anything down in here, so let's click that eyeball, before and after. So that's pretty cool. We're almost done. Let's finish up with Let's just make a couple more of these buildings pop out. Maybe the green and the blues. Okay, so let's go ahead and collapse this group here. And make sure the layer mask is not selected and click on this file folder here. Okay, so we're ready. So now let's come up here and click select and color range. Let's do the green building first right here. Let's adjust our fuzziness. There's some other greens out there too. Not a whole bunch, but let's go ahead and we'll leave the localized clusters off for now. Maybe right about like so. Click OK, and there's our marching ants. And let us go ahead and get a hue saturation. Let's bump up the saturation. Ooh, that's way too much. Okay. Bump it up a little bit, and let's play with the lightness. Maybe we'll darken it a little bit. Pull up that saturation. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's click the eyeball. It's on this roof right here. Now, I'm not sure if there's actually green on that roof. And I guess there is a little bit of green on that roof. And even this one right here. Well, I mainly just want it on this building up here. And that might be a little too much saturation. So right about there. And actually, since I pulled it back, that looks okay. I mean, I could mask the mask and get rid of it, but let's not waste the time and do that. Let's do one more adjustment. Now remember, the layer mask is selected, so let's click on the actual adjustment icon. We'll do one more color and we'll be done. Let's go to, not filter, Dave, but color range. Let's click on blue, like this blue right here. Adjust our fuzziness. It's pretty cool, right, what you can do with this color range tool. And I think you're going to get a lot of use out of it. There's that building right up here too. So we might even let a little bit of that come through. Let's click OK. Let's come to the adjustment layers. Let's go with hue saturation again. And let's pull up our blues. Let's pull some blue color out of this thing. And it's adding some color back to that mountain, which I don't want. Let's play with the lightness here a little bit. Maybe somewhere right around in there. Let's toggle this off and on and off, on and off. Let me just pull the saturation back a little bit more, not quite that much. All right. And it's affecting this mountain a little bit, so I'm going to show you another way to mask the mask with a different style of layer mask. So let's right-click this. Let's group from layers, and let's just, we'll click OK. We're not going to name it. Let's just click the layer mask icon right here. Instead of holding the Alt or Option down, we're not going to do that. We're just going to put a white layer mask on it. Now we want to get a black paintbrush. So right now we're on white. Let's type our X key to go to black, and let's erase it, because we don't want, we worked so hard to get that blue off the mountain, and even the sky, I don't want anything up in there either. So let's get rid of it just like that. All right, that's really cool. Now let's take all of these layers that we've made here. The top one is selected. Let's hold the Shift key down and click on the bottom one. We'll select them all. And now see this icon right here? If you click on this creates a new group, so click that, and we'll call this color range adjustments. Same as I named the other one, color range adjustments. We'll call this 2, because this is the one we just did. All right, so let's click our eyeball right here. Here's our before adjustments. Here's our after adjustments. Pretty nice results, right? And if you felt you went too far, you can come to the opacity, pull it off, and just build it up slowly. But I like it at 100%. I think it's good. That's the color range adjustment. I think you really got to use it. You're going to have fun with this. Well, that's the color range selection tool. I know I've been calling it the color range adjustment tool, which basically it does help you to make selections for adjustments. So forgive me for that, but it is the color range selection tool. in Photoshop. It's super powerful, and have been a lot of luminosity panel creators like Tony Kuiper and Aaron Dowling who have incorporated this into their luminosity panels, and it's amazing. And I think after today's video, I think you're going to agree with me that this is a great tool to use inside of Photoshop. Also, download this image. I'm leaving the link below so you can follow along with me. And when you're done, you're going to say, thanks, Dave. This is really awesome. And I know you're going to enjoy this, so please give it a try. Hey, if you like this video today, please like and share it with your friends. This really helps me out. It helps my channel to grow, and I really appreciate it. I want to thank you for viewing today. And also, if you're not yet a subscriber, please subscribe and click that bell notification icon. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified. Also, leave comments and questions in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Hey, well, thanks again for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with yours truly, Dave Kelly. I appreciate each and every one of you, my viewers and subscribers, and I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.